Hello, my most excellent brothers and sisters. So happy to be with you again, and we are starting another significant book of the Bible, none other than the book of Ecclesiastes. We have been through the book of Proverbs now, all of those wise sayings from King Solomon, and now we go on into Ecclesiastes, which also is believed, I'd say strongly believed, I personally believe it is authored by King Solomon, but there is some doubt because this has such a different tone than the book of Proverbs, which we have just finished. First of all, the name Ecclesiastes, that comes from like a Latin background, but the original name in Hebrew is called, and I'm going to butcher the pronunciation here, but it's something like Koheleth, and it means teacher. And you'll see, indeed, in the introduction of verse 1, the words of the teacher. And so this is instructions here of a mature person who is reasoning and reflecting on life. So as I mentioned, some do dispute the authorship. First of all, the name Solomon is never given in the book itself, and it has a very different literary style and even a different vocabulary and phraseology than Proverbs. Some passages also seem to indicate maybe the perspective of a subject rather than of a king, of a monarch. But it does say in verse 1:1 and several other places throughout, it says the son of King David, and there are other types of identifiers also. Great wealth, great chance to travel and pursue interests. And it'd be very rare for someone other than a successful king to be able to do the things described. So it's a controversial book. In fact, Jewish scholars debated whether it should be kept in the Bible. Obviously, ultimately it was, and it was grouped together with Proverbs and Song of Solomon to be the collected works of Solomon. As I may have mentioned before, it was written toward the end of life, and so it's very reflective, very autobiographical, doesn't hesitate to say, I did this and I did that, I pursued this, I did that, but it is very pessimistic, one of the most pessimistic books of the Bible. Because of that, I think I'm very endeared to the book of Ecclesiastes. I think I've mentioned before in this video series that I have a very pessimistic streak in me. And when I was, something like 19 or 20, my pessimism was peaking. I lacked the maturity to have balance, like I do as an adult. But I just remember being so grumbly about life, grumble, everything's terrible and everybody's selfish and And I remember once, I believe I was in church at La Sierra, and I believe during the service I opened up my Bible to randomly read, and I opened up to the book of Ecclesiastes. And as I started reading, I was so shocked that thoughts that echoed my own pessimistic thoughts were in the Bible. It practically knocked me off of my pew. But it was a real turning point for me with the Bible, as I realized, wow, the Bible really addresses real life as it is, including its problems. It doesn't just sugarcoat things. Book of Ecclesiastes says essentially life is terrible and then you die, right? And so the messages in Ecclesiastes are very different than Psalms and Proverbs and other Old Testament books. A lot of those teachings, you could boil it down to essentially say, follow God and you will prosper. And there are still people who try to, preach this kind of thing. We know the reality is much more complex than that. We see that it is much more complex than that in the New Testament, and we see that it's much more complex than that in everyday life. So Ecclesiastes answers that idea of will somebody 100% prosper while somebody who doesn't follow God 100% fails? It'll address that. And also, very different than the book of Proverbs. Proverbs was saying, get wisdom above all else, pursue it and it will improve your life so vastly. Yes, but Proverbs adds the detail, the wise person and the fool and the rich person versus the poor one, they have the same grave awaiting them. And it's all, vanity and folly. And it's implying, why even try? And I was thinking, whoa, this is amazing, because these are the kind of thoughts I was having as a young adult and still have sometimes. So I take great stock and great consolation knowing that even on my grumpiest of pessimistic days, there's a book of the Bible that identifies with that and gives it voice, and it's been preserved through the centuries. A main theme of Ecclesiastes is that life, and I should modify, life apart from God is utterly meaningless. All pursuits are vain and pointless. And another theme is that there are many enigmas in life. And of all the mysteries and enigmas in life, man and man's own heart is the greatest enigma of them all. Several notable sayings, things just probably somebody who just has a surface level of Ecclesiastes would recognize. There's a unique phrase in Ecclesiastes that's called under the sun. I looked it up. That phrase is in this book 27 times, but appears nowhere else in the Bible. So that's a neat phrase, and I like it. I like the rhythm. I like that it has a little alliteration to it. And it reminds us of our place under heaven, doesn't it? We're right now in the space age, going to the moon, trying to go to Mars, but nobody's trying to get to the other side of the sun. Yeah, we rotate the sun, I know. But still, that idea of we are under heaven, we are in a different place than maybe our spirits attain to be, and we have to come to grips with it. One of my favorite bands, a group called Shane and Shane, they do some songs on some parts of the Bible you wouldn't expect. Like they do a song on the fiery furnace of Daniel chapter 3, and they do a song on Ecclesiastes, and the name of the song and the chorus is talking about our goal should be trying to get over the sun through God, but the verses are all about Ecclesiastes and stuff. So I was trying to think, does that go better in the overview video or in any particular chapter? I'm going to put it here because it is like a song that kind of has an overview of Ecclesiastes. So take a look at that. One of my favorite bands. It's a really great song. Some of the messages that are in here, another phrase that is well known is chasing after the wind. That phrase is 9 times in the book. Book isn't terribly long. It's about 12 chapters. So you have just about once per chapter this phrase of like vanity, chasing after the wind. Kind of silly to imagine. Could you imagine like an aged person or a wealthy person trying to chase wind? It's so silly to imagine that. I like that. I think it's so much too. Why pursue these things that people seem to put all their energy into? Why pursue fame? Why pursue beauty? These things are all fleeting. It's all going to disappear. Everybody's going to be forgotten a couple generations later, no matter how great they did. Significant passage for Seventh-day Adventists. It talks a lot about the grave and the absolute finality of it. True, apart from our hope in heaven. The grave does appear to be totally final, and we believe in the short term it is totally final. A key passage is like Ecclesiastes 9, 5, and 6. The living know that they will die, but the dead know nothing. Their love, their hate, their motives, their aspirations, they all go to the grave with them. If their sons come to honor, they do not know it. If their enemies have vengeance against them, they do not know it. And so we really put a lot of stock in that verse. It's one of the clearest verses about no knowledge beyond the grave. That reminds me of a significant story. I may have mentioned it in church a time or two, but I used to work for a couple of years at a place called Adventist Information Ministry. When I was a seminary student getting my degree for theology, I worked at this place that's the phone center for different Adventist ministries. Ministries like the Hope Channel and Breath of Life, It Is Written, Amazing Facts, about 20 different ministries. And I got a phone call one day. I was a chaplain, so sometimes when people had spiritual questions, the regular operator would transfer it over to us chaplains. And this person had watched some program on State of the Dead, and this person was adamantly against what they saw in the program. They totally believe you go to heaven and you're conscious and all this stuff. And I said to them, what about the super clear verse in Ecclesiastes? The living know that they shall die, but the dead know nothing. And they said, oh, you can't put any stock in Ecclesiastes. That was written by Solomon after his moral fall and after he lost his gift of, supernatural wisdom. And that was a new thought for me. I had never considered that before. And I forget what I said in the moment, but it gave me really something new to think about. Should we disregard the book of Ecclesiastes because it was written later in his life after he had his big moral fall? Well, first of all, he did have a big moral fall, sadly, and it got the country of Israel on a different trajectory. The Bible never says he lost his gift of wisdom, and one of those two accounts, I need to look up which one, whether it's Kings or Chronicles, but one of them does talk about the repentance and the resolution at the end of his life. I was talking with somebody here at church today, talking about how I was going to film this for Ecclesiastes, and they were saying, oh yeah, I hope to talk with Solomon in heaven, and I greatly hope to also. So, it's been preserved. It's called God's Word. Nowhere in the New Testament does the Bible say, follow the Bible, the Old Testament, except Ecclesiastes. There's never a place where it says that. So, fascinating. But let's look at what Ecclesiastes does affirm that we get from everywhere in the Bible. Far more agree than disagree, absolutely. It affirms God as the creator. He has set the order of the created world. We cannot get above our station under him that he has put us in. Faith means to understand our place under God and under heaven. We need to have faith and have patience and have peace in the lot God has given us in life. And really, the book of Ecclesiastes is the philosophical and theological musings of an older man. There's wisdom, more years than I have experienced encased in this book. And even though it is seemingly thoroughly pessimistic, it does have a few passages where it's like, here is the meaning of life. And I won't spoil those for you now, but you may know some of them, having read portions of the whole thing before. Those purpose of life statements are very beautiful to consider, and they're profound, and you can orient your life around them. So we're going to enjoy almost 2 weeks here in the book of Ecclesiastes. As I mentioned, not a terribly long book, about a dozen chapters, much shorter than Proverbs and much shorter than some of these Pentateuch books that we're going through. But we'll have a good 12 days or so in it. So I pray that you are along for the journey. I want you to keep daily reading those chapters. And Pastor Nathaniel and I provide those Bible reading videos to accompany and hopefully enhance the blessing. And I'd just like to be in discussion about these things as a church body. As always, don't forget that you can contribute and comment down in the comment section below. If you even wanted to make a response video to something in a chapter or something that we say, or if you see a chapter coming up that's one that you want to say something about, submit us a video. We'll put it in our videos. Yeah, we want this to be open source as much as possible. Well, thank you for the time that you've spent. God bless you and your families. Pray that you are blessed this week and beyond. And let's always bear in mind our station before God. God bless you all. Bye.